Welcome to The Real Recipe, the podcast that brings you the perfect blend of real estate trends and topics, where we serve up fresh insights and sizzling strategies. So let's get cooking.
All right, everyone, we're back. Just John and I right now. We're Ryanless.
It's nice.
We're Ryanless.
It's quiet. It's quiet.
Oh, don't let him hear that.
Well, he will.
But
Can you edit that out?
no, leave it. But I think that today, this is one that's come up so often. We've talked about it before, but it's been a popular topic amongst some of our broker partners, especially the last month, and that is really managing client expectations when they insist on not hiring an attorney. Now, keep in mind, we practice here in New Jersey, and in the southern part of the state, it's more predominantly people choose not to hire legal counsel. But what does that really mean? And I find that when we're involved in a transaction where there's not an attorney on one side or another, or maybe not at all, the client's expectations aren't really properly managed up front, and I think that doing so would result in less people being upset at the end, because there's a lot of things that can happen during the course of a transaction where you might have to hire an attorney regardless. And at that point in time, you know, you're either upset, the client's either upset now that they have to hire an attorney and they didn't realize that that was going to be the case. So from a title and settlement company perspective, and even from a realtor's perspective too, important that we don't operate in the lane of practicing law. So
Right.
When someone comes to us and they say, you know, I don't want to use an attorney, I just want to use the title company. Really, what does that mean? It's like when someone says a property is as is, like what does that really mean?
Not
but
much.
the title and settlement company cannot in any way, shape, or form act as legal representation for the buyer or for the seller. So regardless of what part of the state you're in, we are hired to perform title searches, to issue hopefully a title insurance policy, and to act as the escrow agent. It's obviously we work on behalf of the buyer for the most part because we're issuing a policy directly to them, but we do not do any type of attorney review. We do not draft any contracts. We don't draft addendums. We can hold an escrow, but we hold escrows for title-related items, open mortgages, payoffs, judgments, any lienable items, so water, sewer, things like that. But what happens when you get into a situation and, you know, as a realtor saying this, you haven't spoken to your client about what can come up during the course of the transaction. So you're buying a property. What if an escrow does need to be held? There's a walkthrough issue, or in an area where there's septic, you need to hold escrow for septic. Who's going to hold escrow for those types of issues? And at that point in time, you usually have to get an attorney involved either way.
Right.
And then what do you do? You're kind of paying an attorney just to really hold an escrow, which is how they do it in the southern part of the state.
And at that point, I mean,
you might as well have just hired them from the beginning.
yeah, and
Yes.
I might just say, thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
Unless it's a realtor I have a good relationship with.
Well, for an escrow specifically, because with attorneys, there's so much due diligence circling around your escrow account that
Right.
for a $500 fee or whatever, is it really worth it to have to hold an escrow?
$50,000 for a septic or whatever it might be.
Exactly. So I think that early on, if you're a realtor and you have a client who's, especially as a new realtor, and you have a client who's insisting on not hiring legal representation, it's really important to outline the reasons why they need legal representation. It's not because you're buddies with the attorney or anything like that, but you really have to make a convincing point that hiring an attorney is going to offer you a veil of legal protection that you're not going to have otherwise.
Absolutely.
First and foremost, attorney review.
Well, right, because the New Jersey formed, broker
Contract.
standard form of real estate contract, that document has a lot of provisions in there that if you don't have an attorney tweak and revise, you kind of lock yourself into certain situations that you don't want to be in, right? So off the bat, the contract allows for attorney review, right? And basically what that means is from the day that the offer is fully accepted and circulated to every party involved, both parties have 3 days to not just get it to an attorney, and have that attorney send a letter out beginning attorney review, right? That allows the attorney to protect you, tighten up your contingencies, make sure if you need an out, you have an out, right? Also take certain provisions out of the contract. So without having an attorney involved, what if the property is subject to bulk sale? Who's filing the bulk sale application,
Right. Not
without
the
an
title
attorney
company.
involved, not the title company. So now you close on a property that's subject to bulk sale. Let's say it's a 3-family home. And is the realtor filing the C-9600? Do they even know what that is? Who's filing that? Mm-hmm. And now you close, and let's say there is some tax liability. That's the buyer's responsibility. And what happens? Oh, it's South Jersey, post-closing litigation. Now they're suing the seller because the seller's liability transferred to them. But in the contract, there's a bulk sale provision in there.
And we'll get that one that'll come up oftentimes when someone doesn't have an attorney, because we'll put the request out like, has bulk sale been filed? We need the notice from the state. And no one wants to file it.
No.
And no one knows how to file it. No one even knows what it is. So really getting into the transaction, making someone aware of all the things that have to happen. And I think that a lot of the hangups for especially sellers are on title issues. So when we send out, we perform the searches. And again, even when it comes to ordering title, buyer's choice in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I know this has become very, agent geared in New Jersey, and even, attorneys too run point on that, but they still have to consult with the client about the fact that they're going to order title searches on their behalf. Exactly. So, as a realtor, you don't want to get in the practice of, if you have a client who doesn't have an attorney on the buyer side, just going ahead and ordering that title search for them without making sure they speak to somebody at a title company and they consent to doing so.
Yeah, absolutely.
We order those searches, we send it out. Commitment goes out to both sides. Maybe there's an attorney on one side, especially if there's not an attorney on the seller side. Maybe it's an estate and there's all these open title issues, estate questionnaires to be filled out.
What does the executor do? Who do they lean on?
Exactly. Who do they call when it comes to do that? Because as a title company,
have an estate attorney, but
yes, we can assist with certain things, but our responsibility is not to clear title for the seller. And that's a big misconception, is we're not going to be ordering all these things. We might have permission.
You're not ordering pay. You're probably not.
We might have permission to order some payoffs, but again, it's, this is someone that they work with their legal counsel on doing this, and we rely on them to have the attorney go through these open title issues, explain them to the seller, and most importantly, draft transfer documents.
I was going to say, you end up having to reach out to me or another attorney to say, hey, we need assistance in drafting conveyance docs. And it's like, for what I'm going to charge them, they might as well just have used me on the transaction. I would have helped them with everything.
And a lot of attorneys don't like to do that too.
No, because you're bringing me in on a transaction that I'm not involved in, and I'm drafting conveyance docs that, I don't necessarily know even what's going on with the transaction. I don't know the parties.
And when we say conveyance docs, we mean like the deed,
the transfer tax documents, the affidavit of title, things of that nature, 1099s and FERP to affidavits, things like that, right? So that, and there's some of us who'll do it, some of us who don't. But at the end of the day, I look at it from the perspective of, up here in North Jersey, we're fine.
We're good up here.
We're good. We're doing just fine.
Yeah.
New York City, New York State, doing just fine because you have attorneys involved on both sides. Mm-hmm. And it's our job to know what needs to come out of that contract to protect you as a seller, what needs to come out of that contract to protect you as a buyer, right? Aside from bulk sale, we were just talking before, but knowing that in New Jersey, buyers pay title fees. So if you're a seller, there's provisions in the contract that actually state that you need to pay half of the settlement fee. But we don't abide by that in New Jersey. We take that out all the time because, this isn't Florida. This is, we don't practice like that. So, if you didn't know that, well, now you're incurring, maybe another few $100s that you didn't have to incur if you had an attorney. They would have saved you another few $100, right? Tightening up contingencies, like I said, there's reasons why you have the attorney, and I think the biggest one is for the attorney to set expectations and lay out the transaction for the client. So anytime I'm referred a client, even if I don't get the client, right, my process is the same across the board. We sit on the phone for about 20 minutes plus, and I'm walking them through every single step of their transaction so they have a very clear and transparent picture of what they're to expect. They're not getting that from, no offense, love realtors, but they're not getting that from the realtor because the realtor doesn't know the legal aspects of the contract.
Yes, they do
understand,
on their side, of course.
Hey, Joe, your deposit's going to be due. Your deposit's going to be due in 10 days. You need to make sure you get your mortgage commitment in 30 days. Your inspections are due, but we limited them.
But it's not.
But they're not going into detail as to what does that even mean? What happened? So I limited my inspections, but can you tell me what happens if there's things that fall outside of that scope, or if I want to kill the deal? And it's like I set those expectations up front very clearly. You limited your appraisal. This is what that means. It's concerning to me when I see language in contracts, even up in North Jersey, where we practice with attorneys all the time, where realtors are putting language in contracts about appraisals and inspections, and it's like, you don't need to get that deep into it. Let the attorney handle that. You're not the attorney. Do not include all this language.
Yeah.
You want to limit the appraisal? Just say has to appraise for X. Right.
And the realtor
I'll take care of all the gap language, and you shouldn't want to overstep.
They want to put that off on you anyway, and they should for their protection, because in all fairness, when a realtor has a client where they don't want to hire legal counsel, it's really a lot of pressure on the realtor and a lot of excess liability that you almost feel like you're in this position where you don't want to be rude to a client. And I've felt like this too as a title agent, and they are calling, asking questions, asking for assistance. Oh, we need this drafted. We need this addendum done. Right. And especially for clients who don't have the technical capabilities to do things, you want to do right by them and help. But at the end of the day, you really might be doing them a disservice by overstepping. And then
what happens if you do something and then
absolutely
there's an issue?
Of course, you don't want to get stuck in that situation.
You don't want to be in that situation as the realtor or as the title company or the settlement agent. So look, on average, attorney's fees could range from $1,500 to $2,000 on residential deals. I think a sweet spot is probably closer to like $1,650, $1,750 for an attorney in New Jersey.
Right. Based on what I feel like we see, buyer and seller side, all the closings we did last year, I would say around $1,850 is an average.
And that's like on the higher end, I think, right. And it's like well worth the money. Like well worth the money. $1,850 up front. I always say, even with my clients who are getting inspections and they're like, well, should I do a sewer line scope, and should I do a oil tank sweep, and should I do this? And I'm like, how much are we talking? Well, the oil tank is like $150 or $200. The sewer line scope's like another $350, $500. I said, okay. I've been in situations where there's been sewer line issues, and that's a $25,000 job.
Right.
So for $500 or $350, do it. It's well worth it to spend the money up front to know whether or not there's an issue. Then not do it, and then post-closing, all of a sudden you have this issue with your sewer line where it separates, and now you have to spend $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 on replacing the whole thing. And you come back to me and say, I want to sue the seller, or, this issue came up. What can I do? And unfortunately, guess what? Nothing. You can't do anything except take care of it and pay for it and remediate it on your own. Whereas if you just spent the $500 up front, you would have saved yourself $25,000 post closing. And it's just sometimes people, was it penny wise, pound foolish? Is that the saying? Right? I don't know. I think that's the saying. But it's you're for $500, there might be no issue. That's fantastic. $500 just cleared my mind. I don't have anything to worry about going forward.
And it's the same with hiring an attorney,
and that's the point.
Or with getting title insurance and all these things. Is at the end of the day, when the clients are, and listen, buying a house is expensive. By the time they've done all their inspections and paid it for an appraisal, if they're getting a loan, it's a lot of money out of pocket up front. And you can't pay for all of it at closing.
Penny counts. I understand.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, and I always use this argument when someone brings up why they would want to get an owner's policy. And the reality is I've had very few. I can count, maybe 2 people that I've actually not chosen to get an owner's policy since I've been doing this. And 9 out of 10 times, if someone brings it up, we kick it over. We say, do you have to speak to your attorney about that? And it's a non-issue after that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when these problems arise, whether it's like a sewer line or they don't hire an attorney and you don't get title insurance, you might save a few $100s. But when you have a problem as a result of that, it's not a $200 problem. It's a 6-figure problem, or an, oh my gosh, I don't own the actual house problem, or, a huge structural problem.
Yeah. Or it's a $25,000 tax liability because you didn't you didn't file bulk sale or whatever it might be, right? So
right, it can range.
There's a million reasons why you hire the attorney, why you work with the title company, why you run searches, why you do all this, because it's for your protection. It's to save you on the back end, right? You might spend $1,850 up front, but I'm making sure that you are protected throughout this transaction, that you have outs in the contract if you need to get out of the contract, and that you're not going to have any post-closing issues.
And you can have a really bad attorney at the end of the day, and it would still offer you some type of legal protection.
Still be better than having
as opposed to not having an attorney at all, because if something goes wrong or if you get bad advice, you have no one to even blame at the end of the day. And it can be daunting when you have a client who doesn't. And the one thing I just wanted to clear up too is when someone says, "Oh, we'll just use the title company to prepare transfer documents." What that actually means here is that the title company is going to outsource that information to an attorney to legally draft those documents, because only a licensed New Jersey real estate attorney can draft documents on someone else's behalf here in New Jersey. So the title company themselves, they are not preparing it.
Right.
They're relying on an attorney to do so, and that might, look like a few $100s to the seller to incur that cost at closing, or upfront, depending how the attorney chooses to do it. But I would just say, as a realtor, or if you work with a client who is really telling you, "I've done this before," listen, if they're a really seasoned investor, at the end of the day, you just want to get it maybe in writing that you suggested for them to have an attorney. But if for like a new home buyer or something like that, you really do have to be confident in that recommendation that you really should hire an attorney. And here's why: because there's going to be a lot of information you're going to come to me for at the end of the day that I can't legally offer you that advice. Right. And I'm saying this strictly for your protection. We just want to make sure that you have the best team in place to make sure you get to closing without any issues. And if problems do arise, that someone's there to answer them in a legal capacity for you.
And look, in my opinion, I think this isn't like boastful or anything, but like I think for $1,850 for what I provide, you're getting a steal.
I think hopefully most attorneys would feel that way
and
too.
And I think most of us feel that way. I think if I called 5 to 10 of the attorneys that I work with on like a monthly basis, who I know and I have their cell phone numbers, vice versa, we text and we work together, we would all say the same thing.
Right.
Like for what we charge and the services that we provide, and I know them well, we all work with you, right? We all work together, we're all in the same circle. Like for the services we provide, the weekend hours, the after hours, like the cell phones, whatever you get from us. I mean, I know because I also do commercial and I have to bill hourly. So I internally bill hourly on my residential files. And I know
when you hit that
how much
that mark
attorney time you are getting.
Right.
Because I have to account for it on my end just for purposes of maintaining like my internal auditing and knowing what I'm billing, right? So I know for a fact you are getting, in some cases, sometimes, double if not triple my fee in service. And I can put that on a spreadsheet for you because I have to bill, right? So internally. So there's no doubt that spending the $1,850, the $1,750 on an attorney is extremely valuable for you. From just giving you peace of mind, purchasing one of the biggest investments of your life. For just an everyday person, buying a house, that's the biggest investment you might make ever. And to not have someone look over your paperwork and just rely on your realtor and your title company, which in some cases you can't rely on them because they can't give you the proper advice, is a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
So who you work with matters. No, but
I would be so proud. His ears are ringing right now.
Yeah.
But no, this is such a hot topic. I feel like that's coming up for me lately. And I genuinely mean it when, I say that I think people who've been in this business a long time that have the right team in place are inherently more successful because you can control your transaction. And even though as a realtor, you're referring an attorney, you're letting go a little bit of a piece of that transaction, but it's so worth it in the end because you don't have to be the person who knows everything. You're not gonna ever be the person who knows everything. And you could be in business 30 years doing this. You just need to know the people who have those answers. And if they don't, they'll say, listen, I don't have the answer for that, but I can get you to the person who does know the answer. Right. Let's get so-and-so on the phone right now and get that addressed for you.
No, I agree with that. So. I think if anything, not only is hiring the realtor a huge benefit to the client, but it's a relief for the realtor, like you said. It's a weight off their shoulders. It's like a lot less for them to have to worry about.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's a similar situation where you're that dual agent realtor, and it's like, well, I'm so happy that we have attorneys involved here because
Absolutely.
I can't be stepping into the whole inspection situation with both of these clients when I'm representing both sides, right? So there's a ton of benefits to having the attorneys involved on both ends.
Yeah.
So
All right. That's it.
hire a realtor, hire an attorney, hire a title company.
Yeah.
Definitely hire the attorney. He's a great guy. So,
All right. Till
it's
next
another
time.
one.